All right, we're on page 78 of Peace Pilgrim on a section we're just starting on fasting. So her teachings on fasting, as if you remember last week, we read a section, ooh, it was a long section. What was it called? On ways of prayer. And so today we're going on into her what she did with fasting. Now I assume that most of this work, she really mastered it during her 15 years of preparation. So she says here, I've been asked about my 45-day period of prayer and fasting. Wow. I undertook it as a prayer discipline to keep me concentrated on my prayer for peace. It was in the second year of my pilgrimage when I was coming slowly back across the country and I wasn't walking extensively. Fasting can have a great deal of spiritual significance, and though I had already found inner peace, it may have been that the fast helped me to learn to pray without ceasing. I also have found fasting. Of course, I haven't done it since, oh, well, certainly not. I haven't done it since I joined the monastery. I fasted a lot in college when I was in seminary. I fasted quite a bit back then, and it 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 is quite an interesting experience because one thing that you do is you step right outside of society because three times a day the whole world is eating, and when you're not eating, when you're fasting, you fall out of that loop, and it makes you feel very separate and very um, you know just separated. You're not almost like you're not participating. And from Swami Prabhupada, I learned that when you fast, those times when everybody else is eating, those are the times that you go in and do your prayers, go into the shrine and spend the time there, because you're giving up physical nourishment and replacing it with spiritual nourishment. Um, yeah, so it is very effective for quieting the mind too. After 2 or 3 days with no food, the mind quiets down significantly on its own, and you become very sattvic, very, very still. So she says, while I fasted, I was at home. I was at the home of a chiropractor who was fasting for healing. He wanted to see how well a person would react to a fast because he had never fasted a well person. I talked to him as a friend. He just observed me. He didn't examine me. There are many doctors, including medical doctors, who are my friends, but none of them have ever treated me or even examined me. Although occasionally a dentist friend will repair an old cavity which came from my poor eating habits in my younger days. The last meal before my fast was a grapefruit and 2 oranges, so I wasn't thirsty. The first 3 days were undertaken without food or water. Wow. You can't live much longer than 3 days without water. Wow. The first 3 days were undertaken without food or water. After that, I took distilled water at room temperature. Nothing else. And when I broke my fast, it was not unusual. It was the regular way to break a fast. The juice of one freshly squeezed orange every hour the first day, the juice of 2 freshly squeezed oranges, alternating with the juice of one grapefruit every 2 hours the second day, and a grapefruit and 2 oranges 3 times a day on the third day, and after that, adding a little bit until the week I was able to eat full rations. I would give very different advice. After fasting, if you were to eat that much citrus, you would get quite a few canker sores, because it would be diluted in your body. So if you're going to quit a fast, you should first of all do stuff that restores the. Well, if you've gone for a significant fast, after 3 days, you don't really have to do anything special. But if you go 5 days or more, after that, when you come back to food, you should drink liquids, and then some yogurt and kefir, those kinds of things that are probiotic, have a lot of uh, bacteria in them, healthy bacteria, to replenish your stomach, and then just slowly add heavier foods after that. You have to be careful though, because you get, if you're a compulsive person, you can mess yourself up. I did do one fast one time when I was working as a waiter, and I only had to work the last night of my fast, and it was a 3-day fast. So I hadn't eaten anything in 3 days. It was my last night of the fast. So I was, I was on schedule to be a waiter until midnight. And so that night, anything that I wanted to eat, I took a little helping of it and put it into a to-go box. And then then I took that home after I got finished with work. And at midnight, I opened up that to-go box, stuffed with all this terrible food, and just ate myself. Oh, my stomach cramped so bad from that. So don't do it that way. It has to be disciplined from beginning to end, actually. It was no different from the usual pattern of fasting. I did obey the laws of fasting, no extreme exertion. I did not walk for long distances, though I did walk some. I did some typing for the doctor. I typed until he took the typewriter away about a month along in the fast. He didn't think I ought to handle it anymore. So then I wrote by hand, which was really harder than typing. But I do the best I can with these things. I didn't go in and talk to his patients as much as I would have liked because he didn't want me to move around that much. I did go to see them occasionally to help keep up their spirits. Once during my fast, I remember I was in a state between wakefulness and sleep. I looked up and saw a dismal cross above me. It was just hanging there, and I knew someone must take up the burden. I reached up to accept it, and I was immediately lifted above the cross where all was light and beauty. All that was needed was the willingness to accept the burden, and then I was raised above it. Instead of hardships, I found a wonderful sense of peace and joy. Well, it's quite beautiful. On healing, one must be very careful when praying for others to pray for the removal of the cause and not the removal of the symptom. A simple healing prayer is this: bring this life into harmony with the divine purpose. May this life come into harmony with God's will. May you so live that all who meet you will be uplifted, that all who bless you will be blessed, that all who serve you will receive the greatest satisfaction. If any should attempt to harm you, may they contact your thought of God and be healed. Very nice. So it's more of a holistic prayer. It's kind of all of that is sort of implicated in just lifting someone up in the light before the divine. So it's just asking for them to be in harmony and to be in step with their divine nature. That's a beautiful prayer. Bring this life into harmony with divine purpose. May life come into harmony with God's will. Yeah. Okay, those are nice. When I analyze that, I'm kind of I I think yes. Anyway, see, I wrestle inside because I've really changed my views on this idea of there being any kind of narrative to life. And when we talk about, the divine purpose or in harmony with God's will, I suddenly feel this contraction, of kind of a fascist feeling toward God, like, wait, slow down here. What's going on here? You know, uh, because I don't, it just doesn't seem possible that it really works that way. Like God has a will and a divine purpose. It's really his isness, he manifests. That's what God is. He's outside of time. So what does he have to do with a will? He's outside time. So what does he have to do with a purpose? Um, it just doesn't fit into the paradigm, and it's not necessary because God is love, and that is a law unto itself, a law that's taught by principle and not by rules. You can't rule somebody into love. You can make a person very fake, a glad hander. They can behave very nicely and behave very kindly, but it won't be deep. It won't be lasting. That only comes through principle and relationship, an understanding of the divine principle and an understanding of your relationship to that. And out of that would come all the virtue that would be necessary. Out of that, all of the grace would be sourced and found, and that would be the impetus for your transcendence, is that grace. And so this idea of a purpose, I think that causes a lot of people a lot of wasted time running around trying to figure out what their purpose is. When all along, if they just sat down and focused on their divine nature and then done what love would do, they would have moved faster instantly, moved forward instantly. So like that. But it is a good prayer. I think that in the times that I would have prayed like this, it's a beautiful prayer. And I don't know what to say about that. Because I do feel what I just said is true, but at the same time, I think there's room for believing it this way also. If someone interacts with the divine in this way and sees God in this way, I think this is a beautiful prayer. And I think it would be very, very healing both to pray it because of its beauty and the positivity of it, and also because it's asking the right things. It's asking for a curing of that which causes illness, that being out of step with our divine nature.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're in the days of Ramakrishna, and Ramakrishna said to you, "Hey, you should become a monastic." Okay, so
Uh-huh.
Ramakrishna is an avatar, so he's like God, and he has a will. He wants you to become a monastic. So, on the to me, if avatars can want things, then God could want things. Am I?
No, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with that.
I mean, I'm just saying.
I would say I would think there is a distinction between God in his incarnated form and God without form. The incarnated form, he does take on the idea of karma, which requires story. And I think that's because he's stepping into Maya. I think when God is transcendent to Maya, I don't think that he takes on any of those qualities. So I guess if that would be a great answer. If or if yeah.
Well, maybe she was like a Christ. Was she Christian?
Yeah, well, I don't think she was Christian. She did see a cross just now, so I think she's Christian informed, but I don't think she's a Christian, I would say, but
Okay.
I don't think that she's an organized religion Christian.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Eager beaver psychic healers are those who work on the removal of symptoms and not on the removal of cause. Eager beaver psychic healers. All right, there's another T-shirt. They work on symptoms and not the removal of the cause. Actually, that's what all modern medicine does. Just go in and cover your symptoms. Take a little bit of a decongestant. Here's a little painkiller. Here's a little deadening for the throat. Here's something for your nausea, right? You walk out the door feeling fine 2 days from death. Eager beaver psychic healers are those who work on the removal of symptoms and not the removal of cause. When you desire phenomena, you possess phenomena. You don't get God. Let's say I am a psychic healer living next door to you, and you have chosen to come into this life to face some kind of physical symptom until you have removed the cause. Well, when the symptom manifests, I remove it. And so the symptom manifests again, and then I remove it again. And I manage to keep that symptom removed. When you step over to the disembodied side of life, for another reason altogether, instead of blessing me for having removed the symptom, you'll say, that meddler, I came to solve this problem, but she kept removing the symptom, and therefore I couldn't solve it. That's what I mean when I speak about some who are content to deal with the removal of symptoms. When one meddles in the life of another, it will just cause the symptoms not only to remanifest, but to carry over into another lifetime. All right, so she's a Hindu Christian. To carry over into another lifetime. Most healers do not know this, and they go on merrily removing symptoms. So that's a very strict idea of karma, you know. Although, how does that hit you? That little bit right there. I find it a little bit troubling because if God gives you the symptom and God also provides a cover for the symptom, and you take that, wouldn't both of those be your karma?
Can you read that again, the part you're asking about?
Yeah, yeah. So she's saying that that's what I mean when I speak about some who are content to deal with the removal of symptoms. When one meddles in the life of another, it will just cause the symptoms not only to remanifest, but to carry over into another lifetime. Most healers do not know this, and they go on merrily removing symptoms. So she's basically saying that the symptoms are necessary for a process, for a cycle to finish, which I could agree with that. But I don't. I have trouble with this idea that if you take something to remove those symptoms, that somehow that somehow leaves your karma unresolved. Because I would think that your karma to have those symptoms would be the same karma that you would have to give you access to the relief of those symptoms, right? It's just like it's just like when Ramakrishna tells that story about the Mahat on the back of the mad elephant and the young monk who didn't run away because he thought everything was God or he was told everything was God, and the mad elephant dashes him against a tree, and when his teacher comes and he wakes up, he says, "Why didn't you run away from the elephant?" And the boy says, "Oh, because I saw everything as God." And he says, "Yes, everything is God. That includes the Mahout that was on the elephant screaming at you to get out of the way. So you looked at the elephant and saw him as God, but you didn't look at the Mahout who was yelling for you to get out of the way as being God." Right? And it seems to me like she's sort of saying that if he gets out of the way of the elephant, he's cutting his karma short, you know?
So she's not just talking about a medical thing, she's talking about other things.
You think so? It sounds like
I
medical.
thought before that she was talking medical, but
Yeah. I think if you remove the symptom, she said it remanifests, sure, keeps coming back
Yeah.
again and again. But if you remove the cause of the symptom, then it is more permanent than
Right, but she says the meddler, that meddler. So that indicates that she thinks that somebody who does that, somebody who removes your symptom without removing the cause, is only interrupting your karmic cycle.
meddling.
Meddling, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not a big point. It's just one of
Okay.
those things I kind of try and figure out, just to understand more in a way how to relate to these things. But in essence, I think it's true that in life go deeper than the symptoms. Try and go deeper than symptoms. So that message I would take from it for sure. Whether or not it remanifests in a next life because you cheated and took a decongestant, I don't know. We'll see.
sounds like punishment.
It does, yeah, it does. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't care for that myself either. It's not in harmony with where I've come. If I had read this 10 years ago, I would have had nothing different to say.
Hmm.
But just my experience with God is quite different these days. I really feel like God is really trying to convince me to step off the cliff, you know, to really just rely that karma is not so important in
Hmm.
our lives, that love is the one most important thing, and that love alleviates karma, gives us relief from karma.
So we
Yeah,
are,
sometimes it feels like works to me. What her
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta. My God, I'll never get there. That's my first thought. It's like God, she worked so hard at this.
She really did, and I think that's a beautiful example.
But
But it is challenging, you
yeah,
know.
and to me, that's not really God either.
Yeah.
the love of
I couldn't say that. I couldn't be quite that bold about it.
Well, I mean, no, for me, I'm not saying that
Okay,
she doesn't
okay.
know who God is. No, I'm saying for me, all that
Uh-huh.
you got to do
Because
this, you got to do that.
yeah, because well, you don't have to, but then she wouldn't have been Peace Pilgrim,
Right,
you
right. She
know.
had her own way.
Right. And so if that's our inspiration, uh, I think doing a month long spiritual fast and prayer would be an incredible thing. To spend 15 years in a purposeful preparation for the divine, no matter what your outcome was going to be, would also be a great thing. But they are tall orders. And I think that you're right in the sense that we can't measure ourselves by people who are clearly clearly
Yeah.
in front of us. You know what I mean? It's like we can find inspiration, but we shouldn't find guilt or accusation in it. I don't think that would be
There
intended.
is good karma too, Swami.
Yeah.
Love accrues,
Mm-hmm.
gathers the good karma.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Right.
All of
So
these things are good
it's two
karmas.
parts. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as bhaktas, we're not really karma yogis.
Mm.
We do our service to the beloved, but we're not calculating our karmas.
Right.
Because love messes that calculation up. Right? It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be stabbed. Oh no, mother's ledger says I'm just going to get a pinprick. You know. So it's like that. But either way, again, return to principle. You're made of love. That's what makes you happy. And so learn that and live that, and this will become a moot point. I admit that a long time ago, before I really knew what I was doing, when working with people who had problems, I comforted them by putting my hands on the back of their neck and on their forehead. I certainly wouldn't do that now. I did not realize I was doing anything but to comfort. Now I place any problem into my prayer consciousness. I place it into the best possible hands, God's hands, and turn my attention to other things. Yeah. All right. So that's her way of dealing with the world. The power of thought. Are you a slave to your self-centered nature, or does your divine nature guide your life? That really is the question right there. That's a question to ask in the morning, because in the morning it will set you up with the proper mindset. At the end of the day, you can kindly ask yourself, how did you do? Like Thakur did, in the evenings. Even that would be challenging for me, because there's never going to be a day where I end the day and be like, poof, boy, I did my best all day. I did everything I possibly could for God. I made no mistakes. That was a great day. Now I can go to bed. Every day it was going to be like, oh, well, there was that problem. Oh, and I thought that about that person. Oh, and I didn't do that. Oh, and I did do that. And I just don't like spiritual life uh, denigrating to that level. I don't like my troubles to come up because I'm scouring my life for problems. I like my troubles to come up because I feel something awkward in my relationship with the beloved that makes me wonder, what's in here? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And so I ask it that way. But it's because of my desire for the love, to be in the love and to be in right harmony more than, policing my life.
Right.
Like that.
That's
What
right.
if you think everything is God's grace?
Yes.
What is happening? It's His grace or her grace, Mother's
Yeah.
grace or divine grace.
Yeah, that's what we work toward. Absolutely. In seeing the moment as perfect, which is,
Mm-hmm.
non-resistance.
Every moment is a God's grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And because of the karma, wasn't it the symptoms keep coming? Like because of our past karma?
Well,
These,
I mean, I don't know. We can't really talk about, how do I want to do this? Because karma is a very difficult thing to talk about because you can't talk about someone else's karma. And you can't really even can't even know the karmic value of an event. How do you measure that? Because if you got sick and in that sickness it was your benefit, somebody's going to tell you, oh, you had bad karma, you got sick, and you'd be like, what are you talking about? That sickness is what brought me to my realization. Right? You see, this is the thing about karma we have to be very careful about, is that we consider things that align with our desires to be good karma, and we think that things that align with our aversions is bad karma, but it's not. That's just your desires and your aversions. That's not good and bad karma. You can't label it that way. That's why I really like Swami Prabhudananda's answer. He said that karma is never meant to be used to measure where you're at. Karma is meant to be used to remind you that you are in charge of your destiny, and that in this moment you have your karma in your hands and are in full control of it. If you use karma to describe your situation, you become a victim of karma. And you're not a victim of karma because you are in charge of karma. You're the one who creates your karma or burns your karma. And so we have to be very careful. You know, we could say that the symptoms came from karma. Yeah, we can't say good or bad karma. We can just say karma, and that would be fine. You know, that symptoms or sicknesses or whatever happens comes because of karma. It's a meaningless thing to say. I mean, you know, that's just like saying, hey, things happen. Right?
We can reflect on it, right?
What?
We can reflect on it. Maybe I have done something wrong. That's why I'm paying right now the price.
Yes. No,
It will
definitely.
make us a better person not to do such things.
No,
So
no, right.
we're
Absolutely.
modifying, creating good karma for next life or whatever.
Well, no, you don't ever want to get in the habit of creating karma for your next life. Deal with the karma you got right now. That's
Right. You do the good deeds so that you don't carry on all that bad baggage.
yeah, yeah,
One way to think about is that whatever karma we are having, good or bad, are we learning from the karma
yeah.
so that we will create a good karma?
Right. Yes. If you
Right.
learn from it, it's good karma.
Wash away the sins. Or
Okay.
That's the thing. To a person, it's really up to you because
Mhm.
if you respond to karma, you know, in a loving way, in a positive way, then really all of your karma turns into good karma just automatically because you're not being defeated by them. You're not being beaten by it. You're accepting it, you know, and you're trying to make gold out of it, which is the best that we can do. And if your let's say difficult karma, painful karma, let's say maybe your painful karma causes you to reflect, then even though it was painful karma, it was good karma. So that's the karma is a very interesting thing, and also I always like to make sure that we understand that it's not a truth in and of itself. So karma is part of Maya, right? And so it's not an absolute, right? It's not an absolute.
Yeah. Sorry. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've never looked upon it. Whatever obstacles have come my way, I never think of it as karma. I
yeah,
just think of things as something to grow, something to learn from, something to grow, get stronger. That is the area in my life that I need to evolve in. And
yeah,
that's what the gift been given to to evolve, to move higher. So
yeah,
in my mind, the word karma has never appeared. That it is my good karma or bad karma. So yeah, I think because like you said, it's one cannot make any sense out of it. It is
yes,
what it is, right?
yes.
I
That's
always say
exactly
this is
right.
in my plate, and this is what I have to learn from. There's a reason why it has come my way, and I need to learn from this.
Yes,
So one just moves on.
yeah. I like those words much better because those will take you to the same place and they don't get messy in the karma. You know, my only concern about karma is I just see it so abused. The way people use it to talk about things is nonsensical, even abusive. You know, because somebody will walk by a homeless person and not do anything for them because, oh, that's his karma. You know, it's like, okay, well, how do you know? I mean, it's what's happened to him, but how do you know what that karma is? If it's like what Swami, I just go back to that thing Swami Prabhupada, the example he gave. I've shared it before. You know, he says you have two men that lose their ability to walk and they end up in wheelchairs. And he says most people would say, "Oh, look, they had bad karma," you know. But he says you come back and check on them in 5 years. One of the men has gotten bitter and angry about all the things he's not able to do because he lost his ability to walk and has become a bitter, nasty kind of person to be around in that sense. And the other man has gone on to train, the Special Olympics and won a gold medal and travels around inspiring young people who are physically challenged how to rise above it. And you look at both of them. Now, they both had the same karma, as it were, Was it good karma or was it bad karma? And so he says, you can't tell. He says, because karma is not what happens to you. He says, karma is what you're able to do with what happens to you. If you can take what happens to you and create strength and gold out of it, life out of it, positivity out of it, move forward as a person, then you've got good karma. If you've got karma that if you can't deal with it or choose not to deal with it, and you kind of just lean into it, as it were, and suffer for it, then you've got bad karma. Not because of what happened to you, but because of what you do with what happens to you. And so that was his idea. He said that karma was not what happens to you. That karma is what determines what you're able to do with what happens to you. That things outside are neutral. They aren't good or bad. Nature just happens. Volcanoes blow up, earthquakes happen, tsunamis come. And it's not that everybody that lived along that section of the coast deserved to be hit by a tsunami. It's not like that. You hear that piping up on the news all the time, back when the they're always it's usually gay people these days that are the cause of hurricanes, the cause of fires, the cause of you always hear that coming off the radio waves anytime something bad happens somewhere, somebody tries to make a political point out of it. So we have to be careful about karma. I think that what you say there, Bindu, is a very healthy way of thinking about karma and very much in line with what Swami Prabhupada was trying to say, that focus on what you do with what happens to you and not on what happens to you.
Yeah.
There was a talk by Philip Goldberg's new book. It's called Karmic Relief, Harnessing the Law of Cause and Effect of Joyful, Meaningful Life. So in that also, like, he didn't emphasize about the good karma, bad karma. He said that about the karmas are like a lesson plan. It's not what you will think that just because something bad happened, you will think that it's bad karma. It's not that. It's that your lesson plan didn't work. So you have to come up with a new idea.
Yeah. I think that's true. What it makes me think of, I would word it in a way to say that your nature is divine love, divine wisdom through presence. If you live according to that set of principles, everything you do is loving. Everything that you do is done with wisdom. Everywhere you are, you're always present. If you live according to your nature, life will be joyful. Life will be positive.
Yeah.
Life will be wonderful for you. If you violate your divine principle, it hurts. And so you could break that into good karma and bad karma. But really, it's just you either being in tune, in harmony with your divine nature, or out of harmony with your divine nature. And so if you live out of harmony with your divine nature, you can call it karma, but it's really just the fact that you're doing things that are out of harmony with you, with what you are, with what your nature as the image of God, as the divine beloved. Right? All right. The power of thought. Actually, the power of thought is horrendous because everything is a thought. Everything, all the visuals you're seeing right now, all the sounds that you're seeing right now, all of those are merely thought. We talk about that we don't have a direct experience of anything out there. Everything is interpreted to us by the senses. And from that interpretation, the mind creates a symbolic world within itself that we look at and see. We don't actually see with our eyes. We get visual information from our eyes, and that visual information then gets processed in the brain and becomes a visual in the brain, in the visual cortex of the brain. It creates an image of it. But that image is created from the information that the mind gets and not from any direct experience that it gets. And so we live in a world of thought. Literally everything is a thought. The whole world is a thought. Our universe is only a thought to us. So she says, are you a slave to your self-centered nature, or does your divine nature guide your life? This is what we're getting at right here. Do you know that every moment of your life you're creating through thought? Indeed, the world you're creating at every moment. You create your own inner condition. You're helping create the conditions around you. Christian teachings tell us that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, which is saying very clearly that we are creating the conditions around us. If we could look a bit more deeply into life, we might see that physical difficulties are reflections of spiritual difficulties, and that negative thoughts and feelings are much more harmful than disease germs. If you realize how powerful your thoughts are, you would never think a defeatist or negative thought. Since we create through thought, we need to concentrate very strongly on positive thoughts. If you think you can't do something, then you can't. But if you think you can, you may be surprised to discover that you actually can. It is important that our thoughts be constantly for the best that could happen in a situation, for the good things we would like to see to happen. So very beautiful ideal there. I think we discovered that. How many of us? There's only one of us. Yeah. Only one of us that was here for our experiment in the park this last Sunday, or the Sunday before this one, I guess. Was it this last one? No, that wasn't yesterday.
No.
When we went to the park, on last Sunday, it was a wonderful thing. We went there because we were sort of going off. I mean, my story of it. Everybody had their own, but my story of it was that I don't like the narratives of our world right now. I'm not interested in them. I don't want to argue about them. I don't even want to talk about them because there's no talking required. What needs to be done is obvious, but people do not have the integrity to do it. And so we're in this situation. There's nothing else to discuss. But I don't like that. And I don't want to get caught up in it any more than I have already, And so I thought, let's create a new dialogue. Let's just create a new line of action, a new way of being. And so we met in the park, and I didn't know what that new line was. I just knew it wasn't the one that was happening. And so we took that freedom, and I just said, I'm running out of power for some reason here on my phone. But anyway, if I disappear, just hang on, I'll be back. But I said, we don't know what Mother wants in the park. So we're not going to assume that we're here to take care of the homeless. We're not going to assume that we're here to spread Vedanta. We're not going to assume any of that nonsense. We're going to be here, and we're going to think positive thoughts, to just fill the mind with positive thoughts. Pray for people as you walk by them. Just develop, like what Brother Lawrence had, a general fond regard for isness, for your being. And then go out and be available to Mother and see how she uses you in the park. And, after it was over, when we got together, the thing that I was really touched by is that people had a very different experience of themselves in the world. That people realized that when you are giving out love, even mentally like that, it's received. We had those two men, two old white men, who ended up playing soccer with two Mexican families. invited in to play with them, and even got to play with their little baby kids. They were amazed, because normally as guys, we can't approach someone else's baby. You can't just go over and start playing with someone's toddler. And he said we were able to. The family was that the trust was there. They didn't have any problem at all, and they were just invited in to be a part of it. And the conversations that we had, and just it wasn't there was no big huge stuff, no fireworks or anything, but just something more important, I think, a subtle life level understanding that you do create your world. And if you do what she's saying right here, if you do live in this world with a positive, fond regard for the world around you, and you put that out consciously in your mind as you're walking around this world, sitting on the bus, just, go around and either look at something that you like in everybody around you, or look around and send out a little prayer for their happiness or for their joy or for their realization or whatever you want to pray for, or just whatever. If you live that way, the world changes. Your life will change. And it doesn't take any more than an hour on a Sunday in the afternoon to test it and see if it's true. We learned together, I feel like, that there's truth in that. And I think that it was very encouraging. I can't talk for everybody, but that was the mood that I felt afterwards. And that's how I felt afterwards. I felt wonderfully encouraged. And actually, I fell in love with the people I was with. It gave me a very special feeling in my heart for everyone, that they were willing to come out and do this and to give it a go, and then to find success in it. I thought that's wonderful. That's really something. So that's what she's saying, that if you realized how powerful your thoughts are, you would never think a defeatist or negative thought, right? Since we create through thought, we need to concentrate very strongly on positive thoughts. If you think you can't do something, you can't. But if you think you can, you may be surprised to discover that you can. It is important that our thoughts be constantly for the best that could happen in a situation, for the good things that we would like to see to happen. That's a real discipline right there. And what a blessing that would be. What a blessing that is. Even if you're giving it an attempt, it's going to be a blessing, regardless of whether you manage to do it for more than 10 seconds or not. The move in that direction is incredible. I have met some New Age people who had heard some prediction of disaster and were actually concentrating on that. What a terrible thing to do. Why? We're creating every moment of our lives through thought, and we're helping to create the conditions around us. Well, it's very true. This is why we talk a lot about the narratives in our mind, to be very careful about what narratives you repeat for yourself. And the one that I have a particular bone against is this constant complaint of people, I can't meditate. My mind is so noisy. It's like, well, now you've set it down. You've made a physical statement about a condition of mind that is different every time you approach the mind, but now you've solidified an attitude, and now every time you sit down, the first thought in your mind is, I can't meditate. My mind is so noisy. Right? Don't produce those narratives, because you condemn yourself to them, right? Simply by the fact that you believe them. They become part of your karma. And so the best thing is not to have any narratives, just have silence. If you can't do that silence and you've got narratives, then follow her advice. I love to meditate. I've learned so much about meditating and doing so much better than I used to, or I enjoy the thought of God. I hope that my mind is quieter so that I can hear it better. So use narratives like that end with a hope, with a positive, with an upswing. Don't just list your troubles and then expect them to go away. By listing them, you reinforce them. By giving them stories, you subject yourself to them. So try very hard to do what she's saying here. Why we're creating every moment of our lives through thought, and we're helping to create the conditions around us. When you hear of any predictions of disaster, there's a reason for it. The reason is that you are to throw the entire weight of your positive thought in the opposite direction. right? So if someone's talking about something terrible coming, we should talk about something great coming or counter it with a positive thing. You know who's really good at that? It's Greg. Nobody here knows Greg, I don't guess. Oh, you've met Greg, some of you. Greg is great at that. You know, I'm always Chicken Little. The sky is always falling. You know, I'm always running around like, oh my God, look what's about to happen. It's horrible. You know, and Greg, I would go tell Greg that all the time. It's like, and he'd be like, well, come on. My best example was 9/11. You know, I was home, my phone rang. It was my mother. My mother's screaming. She's already screaming when I answer the phone. We're under attack. We're under attack. We're under attack. They're bombing us. They're bombing us. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, turn on the TV, turn on. So I went and turned on the TV just in time to see the second plane fly into the second building. And then, of course, Chicken Little goes nuts. I'm screaming, you know, Swami, Greg, get up here. We're under attack, you know. And Greg's at first, you know, he's very calm. That's his first reaction in a situation like that, is to go super calm, right? Super calm and super logical and super controlled. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, they just flew into the Twin Towers. We've been bombed. We're being bombed." Anyway, you know, he stayed calm. He got all the facts, and then he was like, "Wow, you're right," which is not a very often situation for me. And so she's just saying here, you know, be insistent on this positive thinking. Be insistent on believing, really first and foremost, that God loves you. That's the number one thing for positive thinking. That's your number one nail to hit on the head. God loves me. 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 And that's part of the reasons that I'm careful about talks about karma, because if you see karma as the way God punishing you for doing things, and you don't know what bad thing you did for that karma, it's going to inhibit your ability to connect with the beloved to get through it, because you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel chastised. You're going to, you know, there's all that stuff. And then so better it's, you know, like Vivekananda says, there's no one up there rewarding and punishing. Everything is. It's up to you to make it a reward or a punishment. It's up to you. It's like people dying is not a punishment. Everybody dies. That's the law of the world. People getting sick is not a punishment. That's the way the world is. We have that up and down, you know, tragedies that happen. They happen. They're neutral. It's the way the world is. Things do not have meaning until they meet you. You are the one that gives it meaning. If you see it as a negative thing, it'll be a negative thing. If you see it as an obstacle that you have to overcome, it'll be an obstacle that you'll overcome. You know, if you see it as an opportunity for growth, you won't be beaten by it. You'll grow from it. But if you sit down and weep immediately, and that's your solution to it, suffering is your only avenue. Then it becomes bad, right? And so this is what she's saying. We create our world by the way that we think about it. The world just happens. It becomes positive or negative when it hits you, right? When it hits you. I go back to 9/11. I really saw that then too, because to 9/11, to watch 9/11 as a middle-aged white American guy was like, oh my God, you know, tragedy, horrible, we're under attack, blah, 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 blah. And then that same evening, I see a video from Baghdad where people are dancing in the streets over the same event. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, wow, how is that possible that I see it from this side, you know, and that these guys are dancing in the streets? There must be a position that I could stand in where I would dance in the streets for this. Now, what is that? And I started thinking, well, what has Iran and what has, you know, Iraq and all this, what have they gone through because of America in the last, you know, 20, 30 years? What influence is our culture on their very religious, you know, and spiritually focused culture? And, you know, when you start looking at it that way and you start seeing the power of the United States just to kind of be able to infiltrate and to force our movies in on you and to force our values in on you and to force our, you know, stuff in on you, I could slowly see that it was my identity that created a good or evil situation. That if I had identified as a young Muslim man living in one of these countries, that might have been a very different narrative for me. Now, that's true for all events everywhere on both sides or multiple sides, because there's never just two sides. The multifaceted experience of being. Nobody's right or wrong in that scenario. So I'm not justifying anything, but I'm saying that you can have an event that happens, and to one person, it will be the cause of terrible sadness. And to another person, it can be the same event, will be great joy. And so, there's no judgment in that. It's really you choosing what you identify with that creates the good and evil in your world, right? That's the thing about it. And that's, this whole thing with ICE right now. I know we don't go into politics, and I'm not making a political point. I'm making a spiritual point. There are some people that see that as a necessary and good thing out there and supporting it. And there are some people who seriously don't. Both of them make their points. It's up to you to make your point, right? But to go around thinking that the world works in blanket statements is not an accurate view of the world. Things happen. You will make it positive or negative, like that, by what you do. For instance, when there are dozens of predictions that half of California was going to slide into the sea from a terrible earthquake, I deliberately planned to be in that section of California. There wasn't a tremor, but I missed some of my friends who were on the East Coast playing it safe. Oops. Gosh, my phone. Let me just check something. Yeah, there's no way to tell whether my phone is charging or not.
I don't remember people being afraid that the California was it during with the Los Angeles earthquake, or any thoughts on that?
What's that?
I don't remember a big panic about California falling into the ocean.
Well, this might have been a time before you were concerned about such things. She was
There was
doing this
even a
back
song about it in the 70s,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
She
they were
was,
talking about it.
yeah, and there's always been that through my whole life. There's always been this prediction that California's going into the ocean. So I even worried about it a little bit this morning because I heard about this swarm of earthquakes that have been happening up in Northern California in the last few days. And I'm like, oh,
Tidal wave.
ruh-roh. Right. Remember where it says there shall be prophecies and they shall fail? Why is it? Because all you can predict is the trend of things. You can never say what the outcome will be because we are constantly able to turn that prediction into another direction, a positive direction, if we get together on that. Every good thing you do, every good thing you say, every good thought you think vibrates on and never ceases. The evil remains only until it is overcome by good, but good remains forever. That's very interesting because Vivekananda also makes that statement. He says, there's only one thing that follows you beyond the grave. And he said that is virtue. Virtue is the only thing that follows you beyond the grave. Just concentrate on thinking and living and acting in harmony with God's laws. Okay, and as Vedantins, we can say with your divine nature would be the same thing as God's laws. Right? Act in accordance with God's laws or your divine nature and inspiring others to do likewise. Indeed. And see, not telling others to do likewise, it says inspiring others to do likewise. So you don't need to become the universal parent, right? You just become the universal lover and inspire people to do great loving things like that. Every time you meet a person, think of some encouraging thing to say. A kind word, a helpful suggestion, an expression of admiration. Never think of any right effort as being fruitless. All right effort bears fruit, whether we see the results or not. Be a sweet melody in the great orchestration instead of a discordant note. The medicine this sick world needs is love. Hatred must be replaced by love, and fear by faith that love will prevail. That's that putting your flag in the middle of your heart. Love will win here. Right? Or to go down to one of these protests, and just plant your foot there and say, love will win here. Or put that on your sign. Love will win here. And just leave it at that. Don't get involved with the details, the subject matter, whatever it is. Our only knowledge, love will win. And I'm here to witness for that. Love will win here. A song has this phrase, love is flowing like a river, flowing out from you and me, spreading out into the desert, setting all the captives free. Yes, the captives are those who don't know who they are, those who don't know that they are God's children. Remember this, be still and know that I am God. Don't ever forget who you are. You cannot be where God is not. May it be, 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 may it be. All right. Oh my goodness, it's 5:30 already. All right. Well, we'll stop there for today. Turn off the recorder.